Good morning. My name is Chris Adam with Youth Pledge for Employers. I'm delighted to be joined by Gavin Stone from 4YP. Hello there, Gavin.
Hi, Chris.
Thanks for giving up your time to speak with me this morning. And I guess my sort of first question has to be, can you tell me a little bit about the organisation and what it is you do?
Yeah, so 4YP is a youth work charity. We work with 7 to 25-year-olds, and we provide three things. We provide safe spaces for young people, positive activities, and trusted people in a range of settings, both in our town centre hub in Ipswich Town Centre and in loads of community spokes and settings.
It's such a it sounds such a brilliant organisation, with its purpose and to be a part of. And what kind of sort of roles and people do you have within the organisation to supplement the different parts of the business that you just described there?
Yeah, so the most important people in any organisation, from my perspective, are the people who are working directly with your beneficiaries, especially in a charity or in other businesses. It may be your customers. So for me, those are always the most important people. So our main practitioners, if you like, are youth workers and counsellors. Without those people, we wouldn't be able to deliver the services that we do. And then what we have is a support team around them. So we have people that lead those teams in kind of leadership roles as lead counsellors and lead youth workers. And then behind the scenes, we have people like myself. We have an operations manager, we have a finance manager, and we have some admin staff, and we have a little bit of support with marketing and communications. But within a charity like ours, many of those people are part-time.
And if we look sort of at the, at the charity sector, as it were, feel free when I ask this question to talk about your own experiences and, how you came into this role. But, for anyone sort of working in, say, whether it's directly with young people or sort of in the charity sector, full stop, from your own experience, have you found that there are any soft skills or personality traits that would suit someone really well working in this kind of organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent the majority of my career working in the charity sector, and when I stepped outside the charity sector for a while, the financial rewards were greater, but I would say the job satisfaction for me personally weren't quite so high. It's a very values-driven world, so there needs to be a lot of self-awareness, a lot of commitment to make, to want a difference, to really want to see an impact and a change in the lives of the people you're supporting. So it's about you as the person. It's a very person-centered world, especially kind of within the world that we're working in, which are potentially with young people that perhaps haven't always had the best of lives themselves also. So empathy is really important as well. So yeah, who you are is the biggest and most important thing I think you bring to any job, but particularly the kind of work that we're engaged with.
I think you raise a really interesting point there. And, through working with young people and the role I am here, I can see a lot of symmetry in the things you're saying. And, again, from your own personal experiences, feel free to comment. But I find actually, as you said there, that, a person sort of being themselves, being empathetic, can be their biggest strength. But actually, I usually find a lot of the time when I work with young people that they're not aware that them being themselves and the traits they bring is actually their biggest strength.
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you a really good example. So last week I went out and did some detached youth work, some youth work on the streets, basically, with one of our team. And it was just amazing seeing the connection that worker had brought with the young people. So we're walking around quite a deprived area of Ipswich, meeting with a group of children and young people who had very little to do, very little activities that they were able to access during the summer holidays. And the moment that they saw our worker kind of come along, they ran to them, and there was just this instant connection and engagement. And yet the real skill of it was it was a very, very hot day, and the worker was constantly engaged in informal education, checking that, for example, they'd had enough to drink. They were making sure that they were sort of had suntan lotion on and things like that, were taking care of themselves and their well-being within that kind of just very natural, and I sort of think of my life as a parent, and if I was trying to say those things to my own children, they'd probably say, "Oh, Dad, shut up, I don't want to know." But here we were in a professional environment, and those young people were really taking on board all that worker was saying, and it's a massive skill which I think is hugely undervalued. Youth work as an actual professional skill is hugely undervalued by society. When I grew up, youth work was just something that you took for granted. It was available in most communities. Now it's not, and there's very few very gifted youth workers around.
And you sort of touched on it a little bit there about sort of the challenges of the sector and the challenges of the role and that kind of thing. And, we've spoken about the skills that are really useful on the good days, shall we say. As you say, there can be challenging aspects of this role if you're working with young people that, as I say, have had some negative previous experiences. What kind of personality traits and characteristics suits a youth worker well on the challenging days?
You need some resilience, and you need to be open to receiving support. So one of the things that is common to both our youth workers and our counsellors is we ensure that they're all provided with supervision of some form. For counsellors, that obviously has to be clinical and therapeutic supervision because of the work that they're doing. For youth workers, we do that in a group environment. So you need to be open to being able to share. Confidentially amongst others where confidentiality is appropriate, obviously not always within the youth work world, and we don't keep secrets, as they say, but an openness to be able to reflect on your practice and to recognise that you can't be all things to all people as well. I know that having been a youth worker myself, there's sometimes this tendency that you want to help everybody, but sometimes you have to recognise that not everybody wants to be helped or supported at that stage of their journey, and sometimes you have to accept that for yourself, and that can sometimes be the hardest bit. So a bit of resilience and an openness to reflect on your practice and to receive help and support yourself.
And if there was someone who was considering this career path, who maybe they're still sort of, as I say, whether they're in school or in sixth form or around that kind of age, obviously it's really easy for them to sort of to go online and research the professional qualifications that would be useful in this kind of role. But what kind of advice would you give to them about the kind of things that maybe they could be doing now, whether it's in their spare time or things they could be researching or experience they could be getting that would actually really serve them well in this kind of career path?
Yeah, we've got a lovely story at the moment. So we have a young person who in September is going to be working for us. So they came to us in year 10 and did some work experience with us, really enjoyed the work, didn't really have an idea of what they wanted to do in life and where they wanted to go, but just found some connection with the work that we did. So they approached us just before the summer to say, would there be any opportunity of coming and continuing their education and their work with us? So we've set up the opportunity to do an apprenticeship. So one of the things they've been doing since in that gap between kind of work experience and then about to begin an apprenticeship with us, they've been a volunteer. So they've been helping on our summer program, becoming help with activities and groups. So from a youth work perspective, that's something definitely you want to do. Obviously a bit more challenging with the route to being a counsellor, because that does need to take a more formal qualification route quite early on. So with that, I would say make sure you're selecting the right subjects really. You will need to be thinking about psychotherapy, psychology, and to make sure you've got what you need to get to the next stage of that educational journey. But ultimately, we go back to those person skills, don't we? The qualification is the piece of paper that says that you've been assessed at a certain level and can remember things in exams and all stuff like that. But it comes down to the person that you are really is the most important thing.
And if through your own experiences you've discovered, whether it be a personality trait, a soft skill, or maybe a skill that you didn't think would be as useful or as vital, in a sort of youth work capacity, what would that sort of skill or area be?
That's really interesting. My career journey to this point is very bizarre. I was an engineer. I was 2 years into an engineering degree and took a year out. And at the end of that year out, I was a sound engineer, so it was really cool. I did events and all things like that. And I thought I'd spend my life gigging and touring the country. That tour that I was on was actually doing schools work. And at the end of that year, I realised that I wanted something a bit more out of a bit of a greater impact from the work that I did, rather than just helping young people at the time have a brilliant 2 hours at a brilliant gig. I was aware that the young people I was working with then going back to lives which weren't ideal or perfect. So I completely stopped. I stopped my degree and I became a youth worker in my local community where I grew up. And then I started to do my qualifications. So one of the bits of advice I would give is around not feeling too limited. I know that every choice we make feels like it limits the options we have next. But I think it's about me. For me, it was about being brave to say, I know this isn't exactly what really feeds my soul, the engineering side. The skills I learned in preparing to be an engineer have been absolutely brilliant within this job as well. So I know how to plan. I'm known as a bit of a strategist. I am actually a qualified project manager as well now. I did that later in life alongside my youth work qualification. So those skills I think are really, really important. You wouldn't think necessarily in a world which is a lot about improvisation and responding to need as it occurs. The ability to be able to think clearly and plan well is really important. Everything that we do from a youth work and counselling perspective has a risk assessment. Nothing happens by chance, and we're well prepared for when things might go wrong. So that kind of offsets me. So I'm glad I had that kind of engineering projecty focus to the beginning of my education and what I thought was going to be my career. As it ended up, I didn't really use those that much more proficiently during my career, but they're an important part of what I do now.
You've sort of beaten me almost to the punchline there in terms of the advice you would give, because I usually end up these employer talks by asking you, say, about the sort of career advice you'd go back and give to your younger self. But it sounds like it's something you've thought about, and obviously naturally with you giving advice to young people on a daily basis, that's going to be understandable. So I'll wrap up with a different question, really, Gavin, which is, if you sort of had to give, sort of a piece of advice or a statement, to encourage anyone viewing this who's maybe umming and ahhing about a career in youth work, into the sector, what piece of advice would you give them?
Be inquisitive, surround yourself with good people, ask questions. So the thing that's helped me get to where I am, and I don't mean that in a hierarchical sense, because I'm not a hierarchies person. I think it's about that thing, finding something that feeds your soul and feeling like you're making a difference. They're the things that are really important for me. But I would say that I've been very, very blessed to have good people on my journey. So, and in the times when I haven't had good people, I've gone and found good people. So, ask questions, be interested, work hard, get involved, and the rest sort of falls into place. I found. I think sometimes we feel like it's the qualification that we need, or that. I think for me personally, I've been very fortunate. Those things have followed. Those things have come into place when I've needed them. But the starting point has always been a conversation, an experience. Putting someone alongside me who I can trust to give me good advice, steer me in the right direction. So whether that's been informally, and for me professionally, I always now have a workplace coach. But just surround yourself with people that you trust and can support you on your journey. And at those times when you've got to make the brave decision, and I'm very risk averse, by the way, that might not come through in this conversation. I'm an introvert and I'm risk averse, and I live in an extroverted, risk-taking world. Is have those people around you that can help give you the confidence to take those brave, big decisions when they need to be taken.